Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back again with another reaction, and we are on to part 3 of the Bhagavad Gita Made Easy by Dharma Speaks. We made it to the end.
Yeah, it's arrived in a blink of a second.
Yeah.
A blink of a second? That's not a term.
I know you guys are really enjoying this, so I'm glad you made it here for part 3. Hopefully we do a good job on this reaction here, so let's get into it.
After the groundbreaking revelation of his cosmic form, Krishna once again turns his discourse in a new direction. Now he begins to expand on the philosophy of Sankhya. As mentioned, Sankhya is a process of analysis which distinguishes what is material in nature and what is spiritual in nature. Arjuna, you should also understand that I am the knower of the fields, present within all fields. Knowledge of both the field and the knower of the field is knowledge indeed. The field, as Krishna puts it, is our body which is part of creation, and within this body is the knower which is Krishna himself. He is the witness within each and every living being. This body, like all of the material world, is made up of the 24 elements. This can be broken down into dormant, non-manifested matter, the 5 elements of creation, the ego, intellect and mind. There is also the 5 organs of action, the 5 senses of perception, and the 5 objects that are perceived. All this together makes up the field of matter. But when one has jnana or spiritual wisdom, one can see through this superficial creation. Such a person has detachment from the objects of the senses, is free of ego, and perceives the misery of birth, death, old age, disease and suffering. Wisdom allows us to recognize the shallow material world and detach from the field. But when this is done, what is it that we should know? What should we strive to realize? Krishna describes the thing to be known as having its hands and feet everywhere in the world. It has its eyes, ears, heads and mouths everywhere, and thus it pervades all things. Essentially, it is this divine mystery that we should try to realize. This divinity permeates everything. It is outside and within, both near and far. It exists, yet it does not exist. This is Krishna. Once we have come to realize that we are not this body, once we have developed this state of detachment, we move to the realization of our relationship with Krishna. His unfathomable presence within us and within everything becomes apparent. Knowing this state is the goal of life. Krishna states that both the Purusha or soul and Prakriti or matter have actually existed eternally and have not been created. The Purusha, when in contact with Prakriti, becomes subject to joy and sorrow. This entanglement causes one to be born again repeatedly, but one who is able to understand this process becomes free from the influence of material nature. They realize that all action happens within Prakriti, and they, as the Purusha, remain unstained and untouched. In chapter 14, Krishna explains the importance of the 3 gunas. These qualities influence Prakriti or material existence, and therefore play a major role in dictating our spiritual evolution. Sattva is goodness and causes illumination and knowledge. Rajas is passion which forces us to act and engage. Tamas is ignorance which brings negligence and idleness. These gunas are constantly in flux, with one becoming more dominant than the others.
I always get weirded out when they include laziness. Like when any of the religions include laziness as the same, like as a thing.
Like as something negative?
Well, there's a title of a book out there called "There's No Such Thing as Laziness."
Yeah.
Like what is laziness? And for that matter, what is overworking?
Yeah.
What really is it? What's going on? What causes you to do something, and who's the one pointing at it and saying it's bad?
Yeah. Because there is a need sometimes for the body to have a shutdown moment. We don't get actually enough of shutdowns. I'd love to just take a year to just lay in bed and let my body recover from the trauma that it's experienced through decades of work.
You would not only have to deal with everybody's judgment of you, so I know you're enjoying your time off, yeah. But you do realize that your time's coming where you're going to have to get back to it. That would interrupt your peacefulness.
Yeah.
But you'd also deal with that guy in your head. telling you that. The
Yeah.
you that's going, what are you doing, man? Get up, you freaking selfish lazy. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
why people run away and go in. They're like, if I'm going to meditate all the time, I got to be in a cave.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if there's anybody around, Satan is going to distract me.
Yeah.
Do you think people can read your mind?
Do I think people can read my mind?
Yeah.
I think.
Do you read other people's
if
minds?
they know me well and they've seen me act in the past, they might have a presumption of what they think I might do next.
I don't mean, don't
just-
Sherlock Holmes it. I'm saying, do synchronicities occur? Does this world play out in ways where you go, what the?
I think sometimes.
That's unsettling that they would know that about me. Or that's unsettling. I'm going to suggest something really crazy. Just bear with me. I'm just going to try it as an experiment. My suggestion is that everybody can read your mind and you can read theirs. And everything is so obvious. The only reason we don't see miracles is because we don't choose to see them. We just won't see them. Start to see the mystical nature of this thing. Like, I am aware that there are people that are going to give me flack for what I just said. It will appear. Because that's how damn aware I am. They're going, what the F are you even talking about? It's not easy to talk about. But I'm saying so many of these religions are about getting back to, arriving at this great revelation. It's like all religions can be summed up in some final revelation, some place you get back to. Sometimes I think that we're all God and we have forgotten that, or the whole purpose of this was for God to see just what it's like to not be God. And then it's a big union. It's a big reunion we're headed towards, is the reintegration of God into itself, reconnecting with itself again. Can you not see the synchronistic, magical things happening around you? One of the things that I think you can do to start to become aware of that is to drop all this stuff. So what if you're overworking? So what if you're meditating? There's people that meditate like crazy and it's like a hamster running in a wheel. You're getting nowhere. Yeah. It's not a valid meditation because your ego's in it. You're doing it to make sure everybody's seeing you meditate. Hey, did I tell you I'm up to 2 hours meditating a day?
Yeah.
If you're lost in Maya. Yeah. The only way to get out of it is to realize the unthinkable, which is why I said that like jarring. This is a different approach from waking you up with tea and waking you up softly. I'm doing a jarring thing with some of the things I just said a moment ago to get you to really consider for a second that you might be God sitting in your chair right now, dreaming this thing up.
Yeah.
And so if that's the majesty you walk with, if that's who you are, then who cares if you're lazy? Who cares if you're anything you are? And people go, watch how much people can't even entertain that idea. Yeah. But who cares what everyone else is saying? What is your experience? You just said people could use a lot of time off to recharge their batteries. Good luck not caring so much what these other mortals think of you.
Yeah.
They're just mortals. They're just other humans, but we care so damn much. And I know it's a big deal. It's a big titanic weight. I'm not undermining the reality of it. I'm just saying, how are you supposed to do it? How are you ever supposed to carve out some time for yourself to experiment? And, everybody criticizes me for working late into the night. I'm going to do it anyway. Everybody criticizes me for sleeping in for 3 days in a row. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because I need to think. I need to wake up. Sometimes you got to go to sleep to wake up.
The balance between these gunas is what decides the nature of the experience we have. If sattva prevails within, we'll be elevated to grow on our spiritual path. Rajas binds us to the results of action, causing us to stay entrapped where we are. And tamas, however, degrades and drags us down to lower planes of existence. In later chapters, Krishna explains exactly how the gunas affect all aspects of life. The goal of life, however, is to reach that state beyond the gunas, a state which is untainted by their influence. Such a person is free. He remains indifferent, as if undisturbed by the gunas, thinking it is the gunas alone that are active. He thus remains steady and does not waver. One who has transcended the gunas is beyond material existence, beyond duality. Like with karma yoga, Krishna...
If you're beyond those things, then what the heck difference does it make what your body's doing? Like, if you are reached the gunas and you're transcended all this, then what difference does it make the activity you're engaged in with your earthly body? Or is the suggestion that by this point your earthly body is gone? Some of these ideals are so high. They're such high and lofty concepts. They don't fit neatly into a 9-to-5 work week. They don't fit neatly into a normal life. I hate to say it. You want to be normal, or do you want to be in the gunas?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Krishna makes clear that if we realize that we are the Atma, we become the witness. The body and mind may be subject to Prakriti, controlled by the gunas, but we as the soul are aloof and beyond their influence. In chapter 15, Krishna compares this entanglement with the material world and gunas to an inverted, upside-down banyan tree. With its branches below and roots above, it seems to have no beginning or end. But if we can surrender to the Supreme and be aware of who we truly are, the Atman, then we can cut through the tree and gain freedom. We reach the supreme abode of Krishna, from which we do not return. Krishna makes clear that our soul, the jiva, is actually a part of him. As it enters material existence, it draws to it the senses, mind and body. In every incarnation, we create impressions or samskaras through different experiences we have. Just as a wind carries aromas from place to place, the soul carries these impressions from previous lives to the next incarnation. This is how karma works. The jiva is untouched by anything material, but the force of previous desires and actions propels one to the next birth. Krishna reminds Arjuna that it is not only the soul which is a part of him, his presence is also inextricably woven into the physical universe. The energy emanating from the sun which illumines the entire universe, and that of the moon and fire as well, you should know that energy to be mine alone. This aspect of Krishna which enters this world and sustains it is known as the Paramatman. The energy of this universe, even our own bodies, are governed by the potency of Krishna. The power of the sun, the light of the moon, even our ability to digest food is all run by the unseen force of Krishna. This material world is kshara, or subject to decay and change. Our soul, or Purusha, however, is constant and eternal. But even above this soul, there is the Purushottama, or Supreme Person, Krishna himself. Like in chapter 7, Krishna outlines 3 levels of existence, all of which are governed and part of him. Chapter 16 enters a new topic altogether, in which Krishna outlines the character and qualities of what he calls the Devi Sampad, the nature of the gods, and the Asuri Sampad, the way of the Asuras. The Devas are those who dwell in the higher planes of existence and are perpetually in conflict with their evil and arrogant cousins, the Asuras. The way of the gods is described as one of virtue and nobility. Not harming, truthfulness, avoiding anger, renunciation, never malaligning others, compassion for other beings, and never wavering. It is these qualities which pave the way for one to achieve liberation from continual rebirth, whereas the path of the Asuras leads us to further bondage. In the next few verses, Krishna describes at length the nature of someone who follows the Asuric way. Having hatred to all, they engage in cruel deeds and bring destruction to the world. Being distracted by so many different notions, entangled in a net of delusion, and addicted to the enjoyment of their senses, they fall down into an impure state of hell. Essentially, one who is ruled by Asuric qualities lives to feed the ego. They care nothing for higher ideals, and are cruel and selfish. They are motivated solely by material success, and cannot recognize anything beyond this physical world. Instead of acknowledging the unseen presence of Krishna, they believe that they are the doer of action, the enjoyer of all pleasure, and the reservoir of all power. Such persons repeatedly fall to lower worlds and suffer the consequences for their hatred and immorality. Krishna specifically points out desire, anger, and greed as the principal vices which open the doorway to these lower realms. He asks Arjuna to abandon such qualities and take seriously the ideals contained in the revealed scriptures. But Arjuna asks in response,
how do you get rid of desire? Are you desireless? Am I desireless? Are you watching this desireless? You got desires. You can play tricks on yourself.
Do you want to get rid of? Do you necessarily want to get rid of desires? Desires I see almost as like a spice of life, a desire to I don't know, get something, acquire something, or to simply a desire just to like experience itself.
Well, it hit close to home when they show that guy falling off the thing. I struggle with arrogance sometimes. I struggle to understand what it is and how it comes off and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And this idea that pride comes before the fall, getting all puffed up and arrogant and being a know-it-all, and then the fall. But I just think that we understand it a little bit differently, like I had to sort of come to the conclusion that humility can be a gift. You've got the sweet embrace of humility. It feels painful. But one thing I got to point out, just to get sort of back on track to the question we're asking here, is sometimes you'll see the master or the teacher or the guru engaging in an activity that is not permitted by the followers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then this idea of like, I'm toying with this idea that if you are, this can be easily misunderstood. So don't run around with what I'm saying. But if you are awakened, if you're in the gunas, I'm sure I'm butchering that whole concept. But if you've transcended,
Yeah.
and you're in the realm of the gods, then what the heck difference does it make what you're doing? If you're so asleep that you think that materials will make you happy one day, then that is a kind of hell already. It's baked into every cigar you smoke. It's baked into every dollar you make. Not one of those dollars will suffice. They'll always just feel like I could go for more dollars, or I could go for more sex, or I could go for more of this.
Yeah.
It's baked into the wanting of it. The punishment for it is like already there from the inception of the wanting of it. There's a higher way, I think, of being where you realize you've got to get beyond that. Now, the tricky thing is if you come from somewhere where you have very little and there's a lot of asleep people around you and you're sort of indoctrinated and taught into being like, well, we just got to get out of this hell. We just got to work our way out of this hell and survive. That's the storyline that's captivating most of your mind. How much time do you really have to realize the like divine nature of everything? What time is carved out there? So, like Osho used to say, like, I'm a rich man's guru. I'm talking to rich people. I think he understood that the message he had, just as just a side thing, was really only palatable to people whose needs were met. Let's meet everybody's needs first if we really want to dig ourselves out of, bad bus rides where you sit beside a crazy person or, some unconscious person hurts you. If you want to not be hurt by unconscious people, all of a sudden it becomes important that everybody wakes up together, and that starts with everybody's needs being met.
That seems so obvious, and yet at the same time, I marvel at the fact that we have not figured that out as humanity yet. That if we had, the more we lift everyone up, like everyone, and not leave anyone behind, the better it would be. And it's incredible how people, we clearly as humanity have not figured that out yet.
I just think so many things are confiscated. Like so many things are, whatever the word is, like purposely made confusing. So many things are. Like you might see a music video of a rich person cruising around on a yacht, surrounded by people drinking and partying, and be like, oh, that's the life. And he's even saying like into the camera, like, I love my life. And then the camera stop and he like puts glasses on and he's like, did we get everything? Doesn't even live that way his own self. But now millions of people are confused into thinking that that's like, think of a poster of a vacation spot. It's like a person on a beach drinking a beer. That gets old within 2 minutes. You're like, what's on the docket for today? I don't want to just sit around all day. But it's distraction upon distraction upon distraction. When your needs are met and you actually don't have to worry about starving to death, I think that there's more time to realize the bigger picture of sort of what's going on here. And are just that at all.
What if one ignores the scriptures and acts of his own will? What will be their fate? Krishna replies that it depends on the gunas that are predominant. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas dictate the nature of a person. As mentioned, Sattva will inevitably cause one to achieve higher progress. Rajas will bind one into materialism, and Tamas will drag one down. Based on this theme, Krishna describes a number of things in relation to these gunas. Some perform rituals selflessly for a higher ideal. Others do them for material gain. And there are still those who perform them carelessly and without faith. Gaining control of ourselves is also important, but performing such austerity can be done in different ways. Ideally, the body, speech and mind should be restrained for the benefit of others and to remain in a serene state. But we can also use austerity to feed our spiritual pride and make us believe we are an advanced seeker. There are even those who mistakenly use austerity to destroy their body and inflict pain upon themselves. Giving charity to others is also a wonderful thing. But how we give is critical. When we give in a detached way to the right people at the right time, it is sattvic. When we give to receive the respect and accolade of others, it is rajasic. And when we give to those who are unsuitable at the wrong place and time, it is tamasic. By highlighting these points, Krishna explains to Arjuna that in every aspect of life, we have a choice to give in to laziness and ignorance, to indulge in selfishness and greed, or to strive and engage with life in a way that elevates us to truth. Now the Gita enters into the final 18th chapter. So far, Krishna has been talking about austerity, rituals and charity. But now Arjuna wants to know if such acts can be renounced when one has progressed to a higher spiritual realization. Krishna is clear, as he has been in earlier chapters on Karma Yoga, that actions and duties must not be abandoned. Those who are filled with tamas renounce their duties out of delusion. Others who are rajasic do so because of the fear of suffering. But real sattvic renunciation is done on an inner level, not the outer. Whether our duty is pleasing or not, the mature seeker always carries it out. Krishna then describes the nature of action further. For any action to happen, there needs to be a location, a performer of action, the senses which engage with creation, the actual effort to act, and destiny. In saying this, Krishna makes clear that destiny is just one factor. Life is not completely predetermined by fate or karma. Our effort, blended together with the results of past actions, creates future circumstances. But as stated numerous times, if one has risen to that place where they no longer perceive themselves as the doer of action, then they are free of all karmic consequences. Like in the previous chapter, Krishna continues to give Arjuna more grounding practical knowledge about different aspects of life in relation to the gunas. To act, one needs intelligence. The intelligence which can discriminate what should and shouldn't be done is sattvic. But where there is confusion on these matters, one is rooted in rajas. But the worst of all is when one assumes through stupidity that what is righteous is actually unrighteous, and more dangerously, perceives that what is unrighteous is righteous. Even the kind of happiness we experience has its place in the gunas. Sometimes things in life appear as poison in the beginning, but gradually mature into nectar because of clarity and acceptance. But often what appears as exciting and joyful in the beginning ends up bringing suffering. And happiness which is delusional is based on stupidity and ignorance. Krishna spends significant time with Arjuna walking through the gunas. By understanding these ideas, we are given a framework to self-analyze. Through introspection, one can constantly assess which guna is dominating us in that particular moment. As a result, one can discover the qualities we have which are elevating, binding, or degrading us. Next, Krishna explains the four varnas or divisions that exist within society, namely the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. Each of them displays certain qualities which allow them to carry out certain roles within society. While Krishna always states that everyone is equal since everyone has a divine Atma within, not everybody is the same since we all display different characteristics. Brahmins are tranquil, filled with honesty and patience. Kshatriyas are heroic, charitable and full of energy. Vaishyas deal with business and agriculture, and Shudras look to serve others. In this way, Krishna explains that every individual has a unique purpose or dharma. Even though it may have faults, one's own dharma is still superior to accepting the dharma of another, even if that dharma is perfectly observed. Krishna reinforces the idea that the dharma or duty that we are faced with should not be abandoned. Life has given us a path and a role in the world. Even if we make mistakes, it is better to carry on in our path rather than taking up another duty not meant for us. If we do our duty without attachment, then we are practicing karma yoga. This yoga will inevitably bring mastery over our mind and senses and lead us to going within and finding our true self. When one is established in this way, beyond the sways of pain and pleasure, then real love for Krishna manifests. Such a person knows Krishna as he really is and enters into him. Therefore, Krishna urges Arjuna to focus his mind upon him. He tells him not to give in to pride and run away from his dharma. But ultimately, the decision to fight is down to Arjuna. I have now revealed to you this wisdom, which is the deepest of all mysteries. After fully considering what you have heard, You should then act as you see fit. Despite being the Supreme Lord, despite having clearly instructed Arjuna, Krishna does not force him. He is not a deity that inflicts punishment for those who wish to pursue their own ideas. Spirituality is an experience, and we have the free will to choose if we want to progress or not. Finally, after delivering so much teaching, after going through all different yogas, techniques and paths, Krishna delivers the most powerful and clearest instruction to Arjuna. Abandoning all types of dharma, take shelter with me alone. I will deliver you from all sins, so do not grieve. This is the closing teaching of Krishna, that whatever we have in our minds, whatever ideas and philosophies we have constructed, we need to abandon them. Emptied of all pride, we should give ourselves at the feet of Krishna. Even though we may be unqualified, caught by this material existence, there is nothing to fear. If we offer everything to Krishna, he will wipe the slate clean. The devotee is one who takes shelter and sees that Krishna is the only refuge. He knows that through his grace, he will be liberated. This is Krishna's emphatic promise to his devotees. Having heard this statement of Krishna, all of Arjuna's doubts, all his fears have been eradicated. From a helpless, distraught state, Krishna has brought him to the point of pure surrender. Sanjaya has been narrating the whole discourse to King Dhritarashtra. He rejoices in ecstasy at everything he has seen and heard. As if warning the king, Sanjaya finally states, "Wherever there is Krishna, the master of yoga, and wherever there is Arjuna who bears the bow, there will always be good fortune, victory, success, and good judgment. This is my opinion." Thus ends the Bhagavad Gita. This sacred conversation between Arjuna and Krishna has formed the foundation of Indian spirituality for millennia. It has consoled and inspired people from all walks of life, from great acharyas to Western philosophers. This three-part series has only scratched the surface of the Gita, but will hopefully allow you to go deeper into the timeless wisdom it contains.
It almost felt like at the end there, it was like, after I have taught you all these things and given you all this wisdom, let it all go now. That was really kind of like, because partway through there, I was like, man, like I didn't like necessarily the idea of like, well, this is your dharmic path. Now you have to follow it and don't go off of it. It's actually part of your duty to make sure that you stay on it. I like the flexibility and the idea of being able to, like, if you're on a path that you don't like, you can change it if you want.
So much duty talk. You know?
I know.
Like, so much like, do this, do that. You ought to do this. You ought not to do this.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird kind of talking about morality while being amoral. You know, like, behold a conundrum, behold a paradox. Yeah. You know, that sometimes the most moral person is the person that's like, I don't even really believe anything's right or wrong. And that keeps me from hurting people.
Yeah.
You know, because how many people can you traumatize by wagging a finger in their face about what they ought to do because you don't understand the scriptures correctly? Just let the scriptures soak over you.
Yeah.
And live in the actual moment you're in. There's only this. Yeah. There's no other, whatever time you're in, it's happening right now. Yeah. Everything else is a fiction, essentially.
Yeah. Spirituality to me is becoming more and more about just surrendering. And it kind of matches up with that final verse there.
But behold, there's a process afoot. So many things are a process, you know, and it's not like you can't understand a scripture one way and then a few years later be like, oh, I had that wrong, and reinterpret it and imagine a different way. To me, that's like the very fabric of reality is subject to change. Yeah. So how loosely can you hang on to this sucker?
Yeah.
You know, if you really do indeed want to be riding in some golden chariot with Krishna themselves.
Yeah. And my last thought here was much of that part 3 there was about like transcending the material reality. You had brought up some good points there about like, you know, just the grind alone. How, you know, anyone who can actually transcend the material reality, then yeah, I believe you could probably, you know, not have worry, suffering or anything like that. But then what are you doing? Because to fully transcend material reality, you wouldn't care about dying.
Yeah, but sometimes we make besties with our biggest shackles on our feet. You know, like there's legends of masters and gurus that were like kept one vice because they're like, if I stop this last vice, I'll disappear. Yeah. Or I keep something shackled to me to keep me grounded in reality. some of the things that hold us back, we're afraid of. Like, I hate this 9 to 5 grind. Really? Okay, here's a way right out of it. You never have to do it again. All of a sudden, you get graduation eyes on, and you're like, I don't want to leave this, I don't want to leave. This place has become like a home to me.
Yeah.
All this hell and habit I've gotten used to. I'm scared.
Oh, you know how many people's stories I've heard of, like, they, like, retired and then couldn't handle it and then, like, went back to work?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that's, to me, I'm always like, no, that's, like, the saddest story ever when I hear that.
Remember in the Shawshank Redemption when the one guy gets out and he's trying to get back into prison?
Yeah.
He's like, it became home.
Oh, yeah.
It became home to him. So don't freak out. Don't panic. In fact, revel in it. Look around and go, I'm in it. God wanted me to have this human experience.
And also, if you want to escape, and you feel like you're too afraid to escape, baby step it. If there's many ways to escape. You could be like a baby stepping out of a situation.
I love that idea that every meditation is a continuation from the last one. Even if your meditation's 30 seconds long, it still counts as part of that 2-hour one you've been working on.
Yeah.
Every little bit of contemplation, introspection, and discovery and insight, they build on each other. So don't worry.
Well, guys, we did it. We made it through part 3, this whole series. It was great. I learned a lot, and I'm sure this won't be the last Bhagavad Gita video that we watch, because I know it's full of insight. There's lots there to chew on. So if you did like our reaction on this video, this series, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone, until next time, stay spiritual.